time to hear the best and the worst days of somebody's career, and more importantly, how you bounce back, actually, when you're in such a high-pressure job. And this week, I'm joined by Jayne. Jayne advised our government, our institutions, on how to approach LGBTQ plus issues. She was, until resigning in 2021, a member of the government's LGBTQ plus advisory panel. And Jayne, thanks very much for being with us this afternoon.
It's a real pleasure.
And just remind people of your involvement. I gave a little brief overview there, but your involvement with the government and why you ultimately chose to step down.
So the government had an action plan back in 2018. It was a groundbreaking action plan based on the responses to one of the biggest surveys in the world amongst LGBT people, where they came up with over 100 priorities for the LGBT community. And the advisory board that they then founded was to oversee this action plan. And I was approached and interviewed and was one of a group of 12 of us, I think there were, to oversee this action plan. And from my own point of view, banning conversion therapy, which was their flagship promise to us, was something that I was passionately committed to. I myself had been through it. I had led a debate within the Church of England to ban it. And I wanted to see a ban quickly because I knew that people, and know, sadly still today, that people are being traumatized, are being hurt, and even sadly losing their lives because of what they're going through. So, yes, I took up my seat, but I then resigned very publicly because I was so angry with the way that the government was failing both on the conversion therapy ban, but on many other priorities, that I really felt that they had rolled back on so much of what they'd promised, and that we were seeing a return to what I feared were the dark days of the 1980s under what we call Section 28 legislation, where I think we othered so many vulnerable people in our society. So I resigned publicly from that, and from the Tory party, actually, at the same time.
Well, you said at the time, I remember reading about it, that you were amazed. You'd been in meetings with Kemi Badenoch and Liz Truss, and you were amazed by their ignorance around LGBTQ plus issues. I mean, when you talk about their ignorance, what exactly do you mean by that? What was it that really struck you in those meetings?
Well, the meetings are confidential, and I need to be careful about, spreading, divulging too much. But I was concerned about their poor understanding, particularly on trans matters. And some of that, I think, is just ignorance, and some of it is ideological difference. And I think with Liz Truss, she was prepared to listen, to engage, to hear the lived experiences of members of our panel, and how the ideas that she had, some of the thoughts she had, say, on single-sex spaces or on trans matters, was going to really impact. And she changed her views. Kemi, however, I think is a far deeper ideological issue with issues on gender. Hasn't engaged at all with the trans or indeed victims of conversion therapy. And that's far more difficult to deal with when you've got people who don't want to hear the lived reality and the harm that so many people have sadly experienced.
Do you understand, I suppose, the bind that some politicians find themselves in, though, on these issues? Because they are trying to work out how to protect women's rights, how to protect LGBTQ plus rights, needing to sort of work out how you devise a policy for something which actually for lots of different people is experienced in many different ways.
Well, I think a lot of this is, I'm afraid, is a false narrative. It's stoked rights. Trans people are not a threat to women. Trans people are themselves the subject of so much bullying, of so much misunderstanding. And frankly, we have to be honest about the campaigns that we can be seen across the world now. Only yesterday, Russia has banned any trans people from going through gender reassignment. There are some clear anti-trans rhetoric going on here. And so I don't accept that there is a difficulty. I think we need some common sense, and we need, again, to look at factual evidence of the fact that the most vulnerable, the most likely to be physically violated are the trans community themselves.
Now, there are, we know, we are likely to see some guidance from the government this week for schools on gender issues, on transgender issues. You know, you must still have lots of conversations with people who are in and around this space. What do you expect that guidance will look like? And are you concerned? Are you happy to see it finally published? What's your view on it?
Well, I don't think we're going to see it this week. If anything, we should be seeing the very long-awaited ban on conversion therapy legislation, which we've been told was coming shortly since January. But with regards to schools, I think what we need to remember is that children have rights. Children are vulnerable and they need to learn to trust. And if we're going to be outing children to their parents, which I heard an interview with Kemi Badenoch this morning seemed to imply that she was going to be suggesting we should do. So many professionals in the care community, in the NSPCC, in the schools community are really concerned with that policy. So I'd have to read the detail, but I think we need to put the well-being of the child first and recognise how vulnerable they can be in certain situations, certainly in families who perhaps are ideologically opposed to either people of different sexes or indeed different sexualities or indeed different genders. But
in some cases, I mean, and it's a very, very difficult, this is what I'm trying to sort of get at, I suppose. It's very difficult to legislate for all situations, but there are some circumstances in which a teacher would want to let a parent know if a child was going through something that they thought was going to be difficult for them, that they thought might affect their mental health. If they thought the parents actually probably could help and be part of that, that would surely be the right thing to do, wouldn't it? Maybe not in all circumstances, but certainly in some.
Well, I think the key issue there is consent, isn't it? It's having a conversation with the child and asking if they are open to them involving the parent. But to do it without the child's consent, I think is deeply concerning. And often the child has concerns. I say child, and we're talking really teenagers here, because they are scared about how they will be received at home. We've got clear factual evidence that the significantly high level of homelessness amongst the LGBT community and is because they have been thrown out of home by their parents. So, you know, we need to listen to the concerns of the child, engage with them. If they are willing to have a joint conversation or for the teacher to try and help broker a relationship, well, all well and good. But if they are scared of that, then we need to understand why and give them the support they need.
Yeah. Just finally, I mean, you've also been heavily involved in trying to sort out another institution, the church. You do seem to love taking on quite big tasks. How do you keep going and not get bogged down in it all? Because I imagine, you know, it's not an easy career path you've chosen in a way.
No, and it's a very good question, isn't it? I don't feel I chose it. I think it chose me. I think having gone through such a difficult time myself, trying to reconcile my faith with my sexuality and finding myself in hospital fighting for my life, it really helped me understand how much pain and trauma so many others go through who don't have a voice. And my faith is key to me, and I do believe that I feel called, if you like, to do this work. It is tough. It's deeply upsetting seeing how so many people are gaslighted, how they're not heard, how we continue, sadly, in so many institutions to impact negatively people's lives. But I do believe, I think it was Martin Luther King who said, the arc of the moral universe always bends towards justice. And I do believe that we are seeing progress, we're seeing acceptance of difference, and we are learning to celebrate people for who they are rather than judge them or condemn them. And that's what gives me hope and keeps me going.
Jayne, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. It's been great to talk to you.